Welcome to lesson 1 of Mystic Mountain. So, this is the picture from Bob's book, okay? If you don't have his books, I strongly recommend you getting them. They're awesome. And I will say this, you're going to notice when you watch Bob's videos, and if you have the books, there's always a slight variance in there, okay? The clouds, we're going to work on those today. After I talk to you about different supplies we're going to use and just things you need to know, because it's lesson 1, it's a lot of information that's needed, and then we do a little bit of painting. The next few I do a lot more painting. Okay, so we probably won't make our sky quite as busy, okay, but we're going to make these puffy clouds, and then I'm going to talk to you about the supplies. All right, so next time you'll see me at the easel with my palette in hand. Okay, it's class time. So let me show you what I have on my palette. Now, keep in mind you can have one of Bob Ross's palettes, or you can use a pad of palette paper. That type of thing is great to use. But this is just nice and handy for me. And what I've got here is titanium white, phthalo blue, and midnight black. Okay. So in the Bob Ross Master Set, or if you buy it separately, there is liquid white oil paint. I went ahead and took the lid off so I don't have to struggle with it on camera, because sometimes it's hard to get off. But then I have the 2-inch landscape blender brush. Set this down. I got my hands full. And my 1-inch and the fan. Okay. So I've got my liquid white, and I'm going to hold my palette like so. I'm going to put a little pile. Whoa, okay. You see how quickly it comes out, because it is indeed liquid. And I'm going to use my 2-inch brush, and I'm going to go right into that and get just a little on my brush, okay? Kind of like that. And then I'll come right up here to my canvas. Now, remember, I don't know if I mentioned this yet. I have put about 1-inch wide tape all the way around, because this is an 11 by 14 canvas. I advise you to put the tape around there because, for one thing, it'll cut down your canvas size, keep you from having to use a lot of paint, and that's the size I'm using. So to me, I think you're going to have better success if you use the same size that I'm using. But also at the end, when you pull this tape off, there's such an awesome effect. It's like a little matted look, okay? So this is taped. I often use the blue painter's tape, but I didn't have any, and the blue painter's tape is so distracting. So I think it's a good idea for me to go with a little less bright color. So anytime I put liquid white on my canvas and I get this little bit, like I showed you, I like to, usually on something like this, I'll use a little bit smaller brush, but I'm going to use that other brush here in a moment for something else. But I go around the edges like this, okay? So I know some people will go in and they'll put dots, and I have been known to go in and put like a big smiley, and you can do that. But the reason I go around the perimeter like this is because this is liquid. So when I place my brush, and notice how I'm holding my brush, when I place it on the tape and then I brush in, it's important to hold your brush like this and go in, okay? And the reason why is because if you've got the tape there, you don't want to tempt the edges to come up by doing this, okay? Keep it like so. Brush around. On my canvas, my easel is moving. I always say I'm going to weight it down, and then I forget about it till I get back up here. But when I was at Bob's museum in Muncie, Indiana, he had a concrete block holding his down. And I need to do that. So now that I've gone all the way around, I'm going to do these little Xy strokes. I'm still holding my brush like this. You hold it like this when you mean business, okay? XD XXX. Okay, so now you can also do this, by the way. Just don't go that way or that way or this way or this way. At least try not to. So I think I can just probably put the rest on here, but now I need to check my canvas. To check my canvas, I use my fingers. I'll go in and lightly touch in about 4 places. And I have so much paint on my hands. But I feel like this is pretty heavy, okay? Look at that. See how you can still see the color between the grooves of my finger, which is good, but I want a little bit less paint on here than I have. So I wipe my hands, and I'm going to get a paper towel. And since I had about that much, it's not covered in white paint. I'm going to wipe my 2H brush really, really well, like so. And then use this dried off brush to go in there and do XC strokes. All right, let's try it with a hand that has not been stuck in the paint. I like that better. Okay, so this is what we're going for. It's very, very scant. Okay, let's paint the sky. Now you can see I do have a little bright red on there now. So this is the Phthalo blue, and this is my 1-inch brush. So just notice how that I go in and I get just a little bit. You really don't need a lot. A very small amount is all that you need. Okay, this is really strong. And I'll get a tiny, tiny bit. Of my Midnight Black. Okay, all right, I'm going to tap my brush now that I mixed both, and then I'll go up to the canvas. So I'm going to hold my brush like so, and when I hold it like this, because I want to come in and just put these little colors in here with little XC strokes. Now that could be a little bit stronger sometimes because I'm trying to be super careful not to get too much. I might err on the side of too little. But I would rather have you do too little than too much. So I know you've already seen me load my brush, so I'm going to get a little bit more this time and a tiny bit of this and tap, tap, tap. Now the tap, tap, tap helps to disperse that paint throughout your bristles so you get less little brush strokes. So what we're going to do, we're going to be putting sky in where there will not be clouds. So right here, and I'm sorry about my hand being in the way, I'll come right in here and do these little X strokes. And then maybe I'll come over and put another X stroke here, a little series of them. And I try not to get it too boxy. And then I'll come under here and putting in loading it again. You want to try not to have these shapes match each other a lot. It's difficult. Sometimes we tend to make patterns, have things a little bit too uniform. So try to be aware of that. But I still do it sometimes too, so don't feel bad if you do it some. Now, as I go down, I'm going to let my brush just continue to move down the canvas without me adding more paint. And what that's going to do is going to cause it to mix with the liquid white as I go down, and it's just going to make it paler toward the horizon. Okay, in fact, I'll sneak in a little water right here. And we just turn the bottom 2 little brush widths into a little bit of water. That way you can get that practice. But it being paler right there is really nice. because it's going to show that it's further away. It'll look further away. Now, I pulled across here like this from the sides because once you put your brush down and you go like this, it makes a mark. And if you put that brush right here where you want it to be lighter, you put that brush down there, then you get a mark here that what that causes is you to have a difficult time to blend that out, okay? So that right there is what I'm going to stop with at this moment. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I have put this in. I haven't washed my brush because I want to blend this in the sky when it's softer, and I'm going to do that instead of wash my brush yet. I'm going to use a paper towel and wipe it really, really well. So I brush my brush across it, and I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this. Okay, toss that. So this is not clean, but it's dry. That's the main thing. It's you will never get that color out of your brushes, trust me. But anyway, I'm gonna go in. I'm holding it like this, and then what I'm gonna do is go in and do light. Like if I hold it like so, I'm gonna do little Xy strokes. Xy strokes. Now watch how I will get into my white a little bit. I'll get a little bit more here, and then I'm just gonna sweep across. I also want you to notice that my white areas are not large. I'm gonna talk about that next. But when I do this, like this is your canvas and this is your brush. You don't just use the corner, top or bottom. You want to hold it straight on. Okay, so now I have some lighter shapes. They're not pure white, which is just right. And then down here, I'm going to wipe my brush off with the paper towel again. And very lightly, I'm going to brush across. And then I'll go across, at the end, I go across all the way. But see how it still stays nice and light here, and that's what we're going for. So, I want to talk to you about the size of these spots here. That is probably my biggest one, and if I hold my fingers over it, it's a little bigger than 2 girl fingers. This is kind of skinny here, a little bit skinny, but you can see in comparison to my fingers. If you're a guy, you just have to compensate there, but you just want it small. If you leave really large areas, what happens then is your cloud has to get really large. All right, so I'm gonna wipe this brush and wash it, and then I will be back. So let me show you how to clean a brush. Now this is kind of nasty because I use it, but in here is a screen. You see the screen? All right, and this is the Bob Ross Odorless Paint Thinner, and I have used it recently, and it gets cloudy. So that's okay. After a couple of days, that pigment will settle down to the bottom, and this will be clear again, and you can just keep using it. You will have to add more from time to time, but it's not something that you go through very quickly, especially if you have a bag like this. And this is really handy because, for instance, this is a brush with paint on it. I come in and I wipe. These are some ways to keep your paint thinner from getting so dirty or used up so quickly. So I always wipe the excess paint off my brush, okay? Then I go down into this bucket and I brush that against the screen. Okay, then when I pick it up, I will use this bag from the outside and squeeze and squeeze. Then we go over here to the brush beater rack that I have in this nice little trash can, and it's lined with a garbage bag. And then I go in, and you know what I do, I beat the devil level out of it, okay? So that makes it pretty dry. I still will go back in with a paper towel. So here's the paper towel that I'll go back in with and dry it. And that is how I clean my 1-inch and my 2-inch brushes. Also the bigger ones like the half size round or the oval, but do not use the brush beater rack with your smaller brushes, okay? The brush beater rack is only for your big brushes, but the fan, the liner, and the filbert, you only use the bucket of paint thinner. And then squeeze it, and then dry it, and you're good to go. Okay, so let's paint some clouds. All right, I have my number 6 fan, and I'm gonna pull through, and you can see this is really thick. Okay, it's nice and thick, and I tell my students to put about a pound of paint on there. So I'm gonna get a tiny bit of bright red, like a flea's toenail, and go in there, maybe a little bit more, maybe another toenail. And this bright red is not to really change the color so much. Maybe make those clouds a little warmer, but you really don't see it that much. So with plenty of paint, you can even swish it back and forth and then go in. So with plenty of paint, I'm going to come in here and start in the light area. So what I want you to notice is when I come in with my brush, I'll make the little circular strokes and I'll reach out over into the blue. Now, look at all that blue I picked up. So I'll flip it, and now I'll come in and put this, kind of come out this way. All right, notice how much area I have that's open here. It helps to have a paper towel that you can graze your brush on. See, if I just graze it a little bit, that picks up a little bit of that blue. That blue that I picked up whenever I went in and ventured into the blue sky a little. As your paint starts crawling down your palette, it helps to scoop it up, and I may do that here in a moment. All right, so now I'll come right along here with the corner of my brush, and notice that my paintbrush is pointing at me. I'm holding it to the side. That's a very important thing too. And then as I come this way, I keep it moving. I don't stir it in one place very long. Now, I'll come here on the other side because I flipped it, come right in here and do the little swirly strokes, but I can tell that I need to clean my brush. All right. So, I will wipe my brush. Look at the blue that I picked up, okay? Then I'll come in here and really fill it up again. And if you run out of red, you can get a tiny bit more. Okay, now I'm gonna continue that. I'll probably put a little here, just tiny little circular strokes, and flip it and come right in here. All right, notice I don't have a lot of paint in here right now. All right, so also too, notice, like I was saying before, these areas are not huge. These light areas were pretty small. Now if you use a 1-inch brush to put these in, you can make bigger billowy clouds. But Bob used the fan, so I'm going to use the fan. And sometimes fan brush clouds are great. It's good to learn the different techniques. Now, see how that's a little flat there? So I would probably go in and make that a little less flat. But I'm just going to load and come in and go boop. And ta-da, it's not so flat. Okay. So right here I do have quite a bit of space, so I'll go in and put a little there. But I'm going to move right on down to lower on my canvas. And just remember, your brush needs to be pointing to the right or to the left. Now I'm going to actually turn my brush a little because this is the way that I often paint. And if you're right-handed, you might paint like this too, but when I'm doing a tutorial, it's a little harder. But I will put my brush like this, and then as I go this way, my brush, and we go this way. Better to go that way. But you see how you get the little tendrils here? Now right here, I went with most of the width of my brush, and I really don't like to do that much when I'm making a fan brush cloud. Wiping my brush, going in and getting more titanium white. And I'll start back over here the same way I was doing before. Put it down, see where I put that right there, and then go do-do-do. Make a little song while you're doing it. La la la. And don't be afraid to make these bumpity. It's better to make them bumpity. Make them billowy. And this is what I was talking about. See how that just flattens out after a while? Scoop it up. Put it right here. Because the flatter it is, the less accessible it is. And of course I'll need more, but you may as well use what you've got while it's there. So I'm going to come right in here and go boom, boom, boom. Maybe put a little one in here, just a little one. I'm going to try not to graze my brush. Just try to live on the edge. And then put that there and flip it. Ooh, I like it already. I am getting a little bit of blue in there, but that's okay because I'm nearly done. I think I want this brighter. I'm going to venture really lightly out there in the blue. Come in here, maybe venture right in here. And for right now, I'm going to stop because I've got nice billowy cloud shapes. Even though they don't look right yet, the next step is going to tie them all together. Okay, let's blend this baby. So I have a paper towel here with my 2-inch brush. And the reason I'm just wiping it is because, have you ever watched Bob enough to see that sometimes he would just whack the brush against the legs of his easel? He didn't always wash it. Well, this to me is my equivalent of that. So there's times that it's a good idea to go ahead and wash it, but sometimes to save time I don't. But also too, there's times that your brush can get too wet if you don't clean it and get it good and dry. And I just like to make sure that your brush is super dry. So here we are. Now on this nice fluffy 1-inch brush, you'll see this part here that I paint with or I blend with, and then the side here. So let me see, like right here, these few, and then these right here along the side. Okay, so we're going to use the corner, the top corner. That's what Bob's talking about when he says the top corner, and it needs to be at this angle. And then as I come in, and I'll pick up a tiny bit of that blue because I go up into the clouds and then back down into the blue and up into the clouds. And as I dance it, sometimes I dance the other way. And I go up inside the clouds, but I do not go over the top edge of the clouds because you want that to stay nice and bright. Okay, now I'm going to come down here and dance right inside the cloud, and then dance inside the clouds here. A little harder on the skinny ones, but you can do it. And then dance and just pull that lightly down into that blue down there in your sky. So this part that was really just the liquid white that had a little bit of phthalo blue drifted into it when we blended becomes part of your cloud. It looked a little scruffy until we did this part. But once you do this, you move that little bit of cloud into the body of it and then move it down into the sky a little bit, and it just helps to sit it in there. But just like the Ginsu knife commercial says, but that's not all. So do you see how very little of my brush touched the canvas? On either time that you see each corner had a little paint. That is something you can watch your brush for. If you look and you say, man, what happened to all my clouds? They're all gone. But if you look at the end of your brush and it's all blue, then you know your brush just ate those clouds for breakfast. And usually that's because if you drop down too far, or if you use the whole part and use too much pressure, then it eats them. Okay? So now, very lightly, I'm going to hold back here. Very lightly, I'm going to go in and use that side like I showed you. 2 hairs in some air. Okay? And it's hard to see that, but when I did it, I only used this part right here. Okay? So I like to just go in and wipe my brush again, even though I know I could get by with it, but I want you to wipe your brush really well before you do this, and then you go across. All right? And that just kind of helps to set them in, and then you want to stop. Okay? You don't want to do anything else. Okay, so what I would like to do now is just show you a sample of some foothills down here that are going to live on top of the water. All right, so I don't have the mixture that we make up for the mountain because this is just like a little bit that I want to put in. And I'm just going to use the Midnight Black. This is the Midnight Black that actually has a little bit of phthalo blue at the bottom. And then this is that cleaned and dried 1-inch brush. So I'm pulling it and flipping it and pulling it. And I think I might grab a tiny, tiny bit of white. This is titanium white. I'm going to grab a tiny bit, even though whenever I go down into that, it's going to pick up some of the liquid white from the actual from the liquid white that's on the canvas. All right, so pull, flip, pull, and that means pull it, flip it over, and pull it. And there is a good bit of paint on there, if you can see that. So now I'm going to hold my brush at an angle like this. So I had the corner making contact. See how the corner is making contact, and it makes these pointy little foothills. And then as I march across, now as I go, I'm getting paler because it's mixing with that liquid white. So I'll flip my brush, come in, and maybe I'll go over a little bit there. And then as I go, just keep going. And it's getting paler and paler because it's mixing. So then what do? I just go right back in, reload, and then I'll pick back up. Using that corner. All right, maybe I'll come in here and make it a little darker. So the reason I want some to be darker and some to be lighter is because that shows some are closer and some are further away. I'm going to wipe a little bit off my paper towel, go in and get maybe a little bit more, and chisel it. Chiseling means I put so much on there that whenever I push and then I flip, that it's almost chiseled. All right, and you can go in and come in with that. You can go in and make some specifically darker. Okay. Now I'm going to flip it a little bit, but leave some of those shorter ones in behind. So this is just a little bit of what we're going to do here in a bit after we practice the mountain and we put the foothills in. Okay, so now I'm going to wipe my brush super well. Put my little palette down. So to finish these, I'm just going to use my brush, come right along here after I wiped it, and I'm going to pull straight down. I'm going across, and this line that I'm creating, whenever I touch here and pull, I'm going to flip it over. It's kind of already showing you the horizon line. The horizon line is where the sky meets the water or ground, whatever. You see the angle that I have? Because it has the beveled edge, you need it at an angle like this. And this also, if you were painting and you hold it at an angle, you can control where that line's going to be. But if you have it straight in, it's hard to control. All right? So I'll wipe my brush one more time. and then sweep across very lightly. Okay, so I have made some reflections in the water, and we have the little trees, and these may not be identical to the way Bob does them, but I just thought it would be a nice way to finish the bottom of this. Might not be exactly the way he does them in this particular painting. So I'm going to get a tiny bit of liquid white, put it on my palette, and then have it right here. Now in this case, I will probably leave it white, but a lot of times I don't leave it white. I tint it with a color, okay? So the way you want to load your knife when you're going to do this is you want to hold your knife straight up. Think of like a sundial, and then you go across to where you get a line of paint that looks like a thick fishing line, okay? Then when you go to the canvas, your knife needs to be straight on, like so, perpendicular, and you put it right on that line that you created, and then you wiggle it. You can saw it, you can put pressure, and don't worry about hurting your canvas. Okay, so just go right in there and wiggle that in, scratch that in. Down here did it without any liquid white left. But those make good lines too, because they are not always the same thickness. All right, but I just wanted to put that in there, and that is a wrap for the next lesson. And so when you get your email for your next lesson, it's going to show you the colors you need for that lesson. So we'll probably recap the skies a little bit and work on a mountain. So guess what I almost forgot to rip off? Let's do that. So if you bought the 11 by 14 inch canvases and you taped it, then when you pull this off, isn't that so cool? I love that. I love that effect. So if you did not buy the 11 by 14 size, don't worry about it. If you want that effect, go ahead and tape it off. Then you'll end up having, say if you got 8 by 10, be awfully small. But if you had 9 by 12, it does reduce it to like a, 7 by 10. But if you want to go ahead and get some more canvases, then you can do your next ones with that taped edge. But isn't that cool? I absolutely love that look. So very simple, very subtle little painting, but who's to say that later you might not come in and do a little landmass right here with a happy tree right here that comes off the canvas. Wouldn't that be cool? So thank you so much for joining me in this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Have your 11 by 14 canvas taped off and ready to go. And please don't forget to send me a cropped photo of your progress today, and then within 12 hours, sometimes a lot quicker. Just giving myself a little bit of cushion in case I might want to sleep. But send me that that photo, and I will send you that critique video as soon as possible. Bye-bye.